A hidden chamber, unusual wall scans, sealed spaces behind ancient stone. For years, archaeologists searching for Queen Nefertiti's lost tomb believed they were chasing a dead end. But new discoveries inside Egypt's Valley of the Kings are bringing the mystery back again. And some researchers now think one of the greatest royal burials in history could still be hidden behind walls that have already been studied for decades. The center of the mystery is the tomb of Tutankhamun, one of the most famous archaeological discoveries ever made. In 1922, British archaeologist Howard Carter uncovered the young pharaoh's nearly intact tomb, filled with gold, jewelry, statues, and more than 5,000 artifacts. But there was always something strange about the tomb itself. Compared to other royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings, Tutankhamun's burial chamber is unusually small and oddly designed. Some Egyptologists noticed that parts of the structure resemble layouts more commonly associated with royal women rather than pharaohs. That detail led to a controversial theory. What if Tutankhamun's tomb was never originally built for him? And what if another burial chamber still exists beyond its walls? The theory gained global attention after high-resolution radar scans detected anomalies behind the north and west walls of the tomb. Some scans appeared to reveal hidden voids or empty spaces that did not match the surrounding rock structure. For a moment, archaeologists thought they might be looking at sealed chambers, untouched for more than 3,000 years. And immediately, one name dominated the discussion: Nefertiti. Queen Nefertiti remains one of the most mysterious figures in ancient Egypt. She was the wife of Pharaoh Akhenaten and became one of the most recognizable royal figures in Egyptian history because of her famous sculpted bust discovered in 1912. But despite her importance, her burial place has never been definitively identified. That absence is extremely unusual. Many researchers expected a queen of her status to have an elaborate tomb somewhere in the Valley of the Kings or nearby royal burial grounds. Yet after decades of searching, no confirmed tomb belonging to Nefertiti has ever been found. This is why the radar discoveries caused such excitement. Some archaeologists propose that after Tutankhamun died unexpectedly at a young age, his burial may have been placed inside part of an already existing royal tomb, possibly one originally intended for Nefertiti herself. Certain wall paintings inside the chamber added even more speculation. Some experts believe traces beneath the plaster suggest hidden doorways or structural modifications sealed over long ago. Then, the story became even stranger. Additional scans produced mixed results. Some surveys supported the possibility of hidden spaces, while others failed to confirm clear chambers at all. Different radar systems produced conflicting interpretations, dividing archaeologists into competing camps. But despite the disagreement, interest in the theory never disappeared. And there is another reason the mystery remains alive. Only a relatively small portion of the Valley of the Kings has been fully explored using modern technology. Recent ground-penetrating radar surveys continue identifying underground anomalies, tunnels, and unexplained voids throughout the region. In other words, there may still be undiscovered chambers hidden beneath areas archaeologists thought they already understood. Some researchers now believe entire sections of royal burial complexes could remain sealed behind collapsed passages or intentionally hidden walls. If a chamber connected to Nefertiti were ever discovered intact, it would instantly become one of the biggest archaeological finds in modern history. A royal Egyptian tomb untouched for over 3 millennia could contain preserved inscriptions, ceremonial objects, jewelry, and historical records capable of changing what we know about one of ancient Egypt's most important dynasties. But archaeologists remain cautious. Physically drilling into or opening hidden sections inside Tutankhamun's tomb carries enormous risk. The paintings and structures are fragile, and even small mistakes could permanently damage irreplaceable artifacts. For now, scientists continue relying on non-invasive scans, thermal imaging, and underground mapping technologies to search for answers. And despite years of investigation, the mystery still refuses to disappear. Because somewhere beneath the Valley of the Kings, archaeologists may still be searching for the most famous missing tomb in ancient Egypt.
No one knew exactly where Alexander the Great's father was buried over 2,000 years ago. Now, we finally have an answer. And it turns out that archaeologists may have been looking at the wrong tomb for years. If you want to understand how Alexander became that great, you have to start with his father, King Philip II. He made Macedonia powerful and gave Alexander what he needed to conquer a huge part of the world. Philip lost his life in 336 BCE, and for a long time no one knew for sure where he was buried. That is, until now. Archaeologists always suspected that Alexander the Great's family was buried in a royal tomb complex in Aigai, which is now Virginia, Greece. This ancient city had been almost forgotten for around 2,000 years, until 1977, when an archaeologist discovered 4 royal tombs there. But 3 of them specifically caught specialists' attention. They were immediately sure that one of them belonged to King Philip II. But which one? Most people agreed that Tomb 3 belonged to Alexander the Great's son, Alexander IV. So the real debate was between Tomb 1 and Tomb 2. For a long time, most experts believed Philip was buried in Tomb 2, but there was one big problem. Philip walked with a limp. And some studies suggest that whoever was buried in Tomb 2 did not have any clear injury to his leg. That leaves us with Tomb 1. But Tomb 1 had another problem. It was kind of meh. It was small, poorly built, and didn't have a marble sarcophagus. The other 2 tombs were bigger and much more impressive. So why would a powerful king be buried in the least impressive tomb? Experts actually have a good explanation for that. They say Philip II's tomb would have probably been simple and relatively poor, because Alexander was low on money at the time. He was getting ready to invade Asia, and that took a lot of resources. But before we call Tomb 1 the winner, researchers had to prove it. So, a team of archaeologists used imaging and scientific analysis techniques, including X-rays, CT scans, and radiocarbon dating, and compared the data with what we know about King Philip's life. And they concluded that King Philip II was most likely buried in Tomb 1, not Tomb 2. He was not alone, though. The tomb also held the remains of a woman and a kid. Researchers now believe they were Philip's son and his wife, Cleopatra. No, not that Cleopatra. That means Tomb 2 most likely belonged to Alexander's half-brother, King Aridaeus, and his wife, Adia Eurydice. So, even though this new study offers strong evidence, the mystery of Philip II's tomb may not be completely solved yet, and researchers are still debating it.
Archaeologists in Panama kept finding chiefs covered in gold under a plain sunburned field. Weird enough, then they found chief regalia so small it could only belong to a child. That discovery shifted the interpretation of the site. El Caño was no longer just a rich ceremonial site. It looked more like a place where power could pass from one generation to the next. And now, a newly opened chamber there has expanded that picture. El Caño stands apart from the usual ancient gold story. The newest chamber, dated to around AD 800 to 1000, didn't just produce shiny artifacts. It added another piece to a much larger pattern. Archaeologists found pottery, gold ornaments, and a central high-status person marked out by where the gold was placed. This was not random wealth in the dirt. It was a public statement about rank. The objects themselves are vivid. 2 bracelets, 2 earrings, pectoral ornaments decorated with bats and crocodiles. Those are not the kind of items someone tosses in casually. They were chosen to say something, in a world with no billboards, no spotlights, and no giant stone inscriptions. Gold did the talking. It told everyone exactly who mattered most in that chamber. The location makes this even more striking. Not Egypt, not Peru, not some famous archaeological landscape packed with giant ruins, central Panama. Historically, this region was often treated as the place between the main acts of the ancient Americas, wedged between the Maya to the north and the great Andean cultures to the south. El Caño repeatedly challenges that older view. That old assumption existed for a reason. This part of Panama does not hit you like a stone-built empire. There's no skyline of huge temples, no carved dynastic walls, no dramatic ruins screaming a powerful society was here. In tropical Central America, a lot of everyday life was built in materials that don't age gracefully. Wood, thatch, fibers, skin, feathers. Most of it simply doesn't stick around for 1,000 years. So when gold survives, it becomes one of the loudest voices left. And El Caño did not give up that voice quickly. Julia Mayo's team began geophysical surveys there in 2005. By 2010, they had dug a pit about 16 feet deep and uncovered a chief covered in gold. Then the site kept escalating. More ornaments appeared. More chambers turned up. More evidence started linking this field to a whole ceremonial landscape. This was not a lucky weekend dig. It was years of slow, patient work, turning a quiet pasture into one of the biggest archaeological stories in Panama. The contrast is striking from the surface. El Caño looks ordinary, the kind of place where you'd expect grass, cattle, and heat, not dynasties. But under that ordinary ground, archaeologists found symbols of authority designed to be seen from a distance. Polished gold would have caught the harsh sunlight. Chest ornaments likely flashed when a leader moved. Animal imagery, bats, crocodiles, and other powerful creatures turned jewelry into a visual language of authority. This was status you could spot instantly, and the newest chamber matters because it is not standing alone. Mayo said the site has produced 9 similar chambers and that this was a place where elite individuals were laid to rest for about 200 years. This finding expands the interpretation of the site. One rich chamber is interesting. A ceremonial resting ground used by powerful people across multiple generations suggests something else entirely. It begins to resemble a long-running system. You can see that system even more clearly in another major El Caño find from 2024. Archaeologists uncovered the shared chamber of an important Cocle lord buried around 750 to 800 CE. Inside were gold ornaments, ceramic objects, bells, skirts, and a set of flutes. The team dubbed him the Lord of the Flutes, which sounds almost legendary until you remember this is not a myth. It's a real person from a real ceremonial tradition found in the same site. The scale grows even larger around that burial. Researchers found many other individuals placed in the same setting. Reports said the total could reach more than 30 people. At that point, you are no longer looking at one important person with a collection of objects. You are looking at an event, a choreographed display, a message to everyone watching that this leader stood at the center of a much bigger social order. This interpretation is supported by research. A 2020 study of El Caño's multiple chambers found the same basic pattern again and again. One highest status individual in each other, people arranged around that central figure, and a strong sense that the whole composition represented social order. The authors also concluded that some of these final ceremonies involved very harsh ritual practices. The layout itself was part of the performance of power. Now go back to the child-sized regalia, because that might be the strangest clue of all. One of Mayo's earlier breakthroughs came when she realized a set of tiny gold objects was too small for an adult. They appear to have belonged to a baby adorned like a chief. Later, the team found gold arm cuffs on the skeleton of a 12-year-old boy. Both finds point in the same direction. Status here may not have been something a person earned late in life. It may have started at birth. That implication is significant. If rank passed from father to son, then El Caño was not showing us a few isolated leaders. It was revealing a hereditary power system. That means established families, succession, and rules strong enough for an entire community to recognize them. Gold-working specialists had to exist, ceremonial knowledge had to be preserved, labor had to be organized. These were not loose little villages improvising everything as they went. This was structure. It also explains why El Caño feels bigger than a treasure story. Gold draws attention first. The real subject is political sophistication. The objects are only useful because of what they reveal: hierarchy, ceremony, inherited authority, and a leadership class that could stage power in a way everyone understood. Gold is what catches your eye first. The social system is what keeps the site interesting once the shine wears off. There is another reason El Caño matters so much. Less than 2 miles away sits Sitio Conte, the older Panamanian site that had long provided the main evidence for this gold-rich tradition. For years, Sitio Conte was the big reference point. Then El Caño started turning up its own chiefs, its own ornaments, its own ceremonial patterns. Suddenly, this was not one isolated hotspot. It was a broader cultural world, hiding in plain sight across the same landscape. Once you imagine that world, El Caño becomes incredibly visual. No giant stone monuments. Fine, the ceremony can still feel huge. Flutes playing, bells moving, gold breastplates flashing, beads sewn into clothing, animal symbols broadcasting lineage and rank. One early chief found at El Caño wore gold breastplates, arm cuffs, a bracelet of bells, a belt of hollow gold beads, and more than 2,000 tiny gold spheres arranged as if sewn onto a sash. That is not subtle fashion. That is ceremonial theater. Imagine one of these final ceremonies. A leader is placed at the center. Gold catches the light. Music carries across the field. Companions are arranged with strict meaning. Everyone present can read the scene without a single written word. This person held the highest place. These families mattered. This order continues even now. The point was not private grief. The point was public memory and public hierarchy. That is why El Caño changes the history of Panama in a very specific way. It does not just add one more archaeological attraction to the map, it shows that central Panama had its own powerful chiefs, its own ceremonial specialists, its own symbols of rank, and probably its own dynastic lines. This region was not just absorbing importance from bigger neighbors, it was generating its own, and the site is still making that point clearer. El Caño has already revealed multiple elite chambers across years of excavation, and each new one expands the story. So the key discovery here is not a bracelet, or an earring, or even a chamber filled with gold. It is the realization that an ordinary Panamanian field was hiding a cemetery of rulers and clues to a forgotten power system that had been there the whole time, just waiting for someone to look deeper. Now picture a tomb locked for 1,400 years, and then, suddenly, poof, it's open. What could be inside? An ancient curse or exciting discoveries? Maybe the former, since a giant stone owl is guarding the entrance with the owl's beak clamping down on a human face like it's swallowing a soul. Now, it's not just a picture this situation. The discovery probably happened like this. The archaeologists were at a place called San Pablo Huitzo in southern Mexico. At one point, they stumbled upon something that resembled an entrance. Ooh, where did it lead? They just had to figure it out. By that entrance, there was a large carved owl. Soon the researchers realized that it wasn't just decoration. The beak of the bird was open, and inside, there was the painted face of a man. Most likely, it was an important leader. For the people inhabiting that region, owls were linked to demise and power. So, it was like either the owl was guarding the spirit of the person buried there, or was it holding it captive? Was it even wise to sneak into that mysterious place? Well, the scientists' thirst for answers was more powerful than any fear. So they entered and found themselves inside a tomb. It was made up of two main parts: a front room, kind of like an entrance hall, and a deeper burial room. There was a doorway between these two rooms. It was covered in carvings. At the top, there was a stone beam with special symbols on it. Those symbols worked like names based on a person's birth date. On each side of the doorway, there were carvings of a man and a woman wearing detailed headdresses. The researchers thought they could have been placed there like guards, watching over the tomb. The walls were still painted in bright colors: white, green, red, and blue. It was an astonishing view, and the paintings actually told a story, showing a funeral procession. People were carrying bags of something called copal, which is basically a tree resin. The locals, called Zapotecs, burned it like incense during ceremonies, kind of like how people today often light candles or incense during special rituals. Besides, the archaeologists found carved symbols that work like a calendar. A bit later, the researchers found out that the tomb was about 1,400 years old. It came from the Zapotec civilization, and what made it so special was how well everything inside was still preserved. It was like opening a time capsule that hadn't been touched for over 1,000 years. Interestingly, they didn't just randomly find it. Officials started looking into the site after someone reported looting. When scientists checked it out, they realized they had stumbled onto one of the most important discoveries in Mexico in the last decade. The tomb dates back to around the year 600, when the Zapotec people were thriving in the area. They were sometimes called the Cloud People, and they built a powerful civilization long before the Spanish arrived. Even today, many people in Mexico still speak Zapotec languages. Right now, experts from the National Institute of Anthropology and History are working carefully to protect the tomb and study everything inside. They're looking at things like pottery, symbols, and even a few human bones they found there. One of the most exciting things about this discovery was that many other Zapotec tombs found in the region had already been looted before archaeologists got to them. That means we lost a lot of history. Luckily, this tomb was miraculously mostly intact. Now scientists are focusing on protecting the tomb. They're carefully controlling the air and humidity inside because even small changes can damage it, documenting the artwork, and studying the carvings and symbols. But ancient tombs aren't always hidden deep underground, like in adventure movies. Sometimes you can find them right under a busy city. In 2023, archaeologists made a bizarre discovery on the edge of Chapultepec Park in Mexico City. They found a group of graves that are about 3,500 years old, older than most ancient pyramids in Mexico. There were 10 tombs shaped a bit like upside-down bottles or bells, wide at the bottom and narrower at the top. About half of them had human remains inside, 4 women and 1 man, mostly young adults. These people likely lived in a large village in the area during the early and middle pre-classic periods. That's long before the Aztecs ever existed. One of the archaeologists explained that people had been living in that whole area before a volcano had changed everything. That volcano is the Chila volcano, and when it erupted, it basically buried parts of the landscape under lava. Because of that, the ground where those tombs were stayed sealed and untouched for over 3,000 years. The Chila volcano is what's called an ash cone volcano. Basically, it looks like a classic volcano shape anyone would draw, round at the bottom and rising into a cone. It's about 1,000 feet tall with pretty steep sides, like walking up a hill that tilts about 30 to 40 degrees, which is definitely not an easy climb. Scientists believe Chila erupted sometime between 245 and 315 CE, based on radiocarbon dating. When it blew, it wasn't a small event. It completely changed the landscape. Lava spread out and formed what we now call the Pedregal de San Angel lava fields, covering a huge area south of modern-day Mexico City. Imagine a thick, slow-moving wave of molten rock turning everything in its path into solid stone. One of the biggest victims of this eruption was Quiquilco, which was once a major and advanced city in Mesoamerica. The lava literally buried it, freezing it in time under layers of rock. After that, the people who lived there had to leave and spread out to other regions. On the bright side, this movement of people, kind of like a forced migration, helped spread their culture across central Mexico. It may even have influenced the development of nearby cities, like Teotihuacan. Sometime later, it became one of the most powerful urban centers in the region. But this story has a twist. Not all scientists agree on the timing. Some think that a series of big eruptions and the destruction of Quiquilco might have actually started earlier, around the 1st century BCE. So, depending on which history you look at, this disaster either happened a bit later in Roman times or even earlier, back when ancient civilizations in Mexico were still developing. Either way, it was a catastrophic event that reshaped both the land and the lives of the people living there. But let's get back to the tombs. They aren't huge. Most are about 3 to 6.5 feet wide and up to 5 feet tall. Picture something about the size of a small closet or a big storage bin you could crouch inside. Archaeologists call them bell tombs because of that rounded bottle-like shape. This style isn't unique to just one place. We've found similar tombs across different parts of Mexico. It means people must have shared their ideas, like trends spreading between regions today. Another curious thing is that this wasn't a one-time burial site. The team found later burials too, which means people kept coming back to that spot for generations. It was a place that remained important to a community for hundreds of years. Inside the tombs, archaeologists found offerings buried with those who had passed away. There were tools made from deer antlers, a cup, and small female figurines. They were probably personal items or symbolic gifts, similar to how people today might leave flowers or meaningful objects at a grave. All those items have been moved to the National Museum of History for careful study. Experts use them to figure out more about how those people lived. Luckily, this isn't the only discovery in the area. Construction work around Zapotec Park has been turning up all kinds of history lately. In fact, not long before this, archaeologists even found a 16th century cemetery from less than 100 years after the fall of the Aztec Empire after the Spanish conquest. Once upon a time, I searched through the jungle, following a map poorly drawn on a piece of cloth. After days of walking, I reached an ancient Mayan temple. As soon as I stepped in, a strange noise echoed. I turned to leave, but suddenly the floor cracked beneath my feet. I fell into a 1,600-year-old tomb. Finally, I got lucky. That day, I walked out with shiny jades, carved seashells, a creepy afterlife mask, and a curse that's been haunting me ever since. Well, okay, maybe it didn't happen exactly like that. Or maybe it didn't happen to me. Sadly, real-life archaeology is not like Indiana Jones movies. However, the findings can be as exciting and important, especially in Belize, where archaeologists just found the first identifiable ruler's tomb in the lost Mayan city of Caracol after 40 years of digging. A team of archaeologists finally unsealed a hidden chamber, buried deep beneath a structure they'd already studied. And inside that tomb, which is indeed around 1,600 years old, was King Chak, the first known king of Caracol. His name is commonly interpreted as Tree Branch Rain Deity, which is poetic and incredibly awesome. King Chak was believed to be a Mayan deity in control of rain, thunder, and lightning. According to folklore, he used axes to strike rain-bearing snakes in the sky to make the rain fall. The buried king is considered to be the dynasty founder. The royal dynasty he founded lasted more than 460 years. And judging by what was buried with him, we can assume that King Chak was greatly celebrated. His tomb had jade beads, carved bones, seashell jewelry, and ritual pottery vessels. One of those vessels shows Ek Chua, the Maya deity of trade, receiving offerings. Others showed bound prisoners. Archaeologists could tell they had found some high royalty when they noticed a considerable presence of red cinnabar in the tomb, a rare and expensive material from the Mayan world. Then there's a jade mosaic mask, pieced together like a puzzle to cover the king's face in brilliant green. Jade wasn't used just because it was shiny. It was sacred and symbolically associated with life and demise. Polished jade glistens like it's been dipped in water, cool at first, but quickly warming in your hand. To the ancient Maya, this lifelike quality made jade a living, breathing substance. And for this reason, it possessed high religious and spiritual importance. The Maya associated it with the breath of life, with royalty, and with eternity. Covering someone's face in jade showed just how high-ranking that person was. King Chak's mask has yet to be examined properly, but another famous mask of King Pakal was made of over 346 green jade stone fragments. That's a lot of painstaking work. But maybe the most symbolically fascinating thing about this king was that he was old. Not just lived a good life old, toothless old. To us, that means he didn't clean his teeth properly, because no, you don't usually lose teeth just from getting old, as long as you maintain good oral hygiene and dental care. On the other hand, according to Maya legends, toothless elders were believed to have spiritual powers. Rulers and shamans mediated between realms, and aged or underworld deities were often shown as toothless in art. Now, speaking of realms, Mayan cosmology divided the universe into 3 layers. The upper world was where the deities lived. The middle world was where humans lived. It was carried on the back of a giant turtle or caiman, and surrounded by a primordial sea. Beneath it was the underworld, known as Xibalba, a dark and complex realm of spirits and ancestors. And certain people, especially rulers, shamans, and elders, were believed to move between these worlds. This king was a ruler, had a deity-like name, and was a toothless elder. Boy, his power level must have been off the charts. But that's not all. Here's the eerie part. The tomb was buried beneath another tomb, which was discovered all the way back in 1993. Archaeologists were investigating a different burial when they realized there was another chamber hidden beneath it, an interesting hiding place. Remarkably, it worked. For more than 1,600 years, no one found him. This makes King Chak's tomb the first ever discovered at Karakol that can be definitely linked to a known ruler, thanks to hieroglyphs, burial context, and artifacts. Now, if you're not a geography or history buff, you've probably never heard of Karakol. Today, it's a remote ruin deep in the jungles of western Belize. But around 16 centuries ago, Karakol was one of the largest and most powerful cities in the entire Maya world. At its peak, it covered over 77 square miles, which, for reference, is larger than modern-day Belize City. Its population was around 100,000 people. That's more than most cities in Europe had at that time. And it wasn't just big, it was advanced. Karakol had pyramids, ball courts, palaces, reservoirs, and a very complex road system. Stuff like limestone superhighways stretching miles through the jungle. Past excavations also turned up arrowheads, drills, spindle whorls, figurines, and everyday tools. King Chak's tomb was one of the 3 major tombs found in the northeast Acropolis. That's near Kana, the central archaeological complex at Karakol, and one of the tallest human-made buildings in all of Belize, even today. It reaches an imposing 141 feet high and contains multiple levels of elite residences and temples. But even with that size, finding tombs isn't easy at all. Most have already been looted. We don't know what else can be hidden there, and in some places, it's too risky to dig up without causing damage. That's why it took researchers decades to finally find something untouched. However, they were able to report over 850 burials and 175 tombs at Karakol over their 4-decade-long project. One of the earliest tombs, dating to around 350 CE, was a cremation burial containing ritual artifacts such as obsidian blades, atlatl spear points, and ceramic styles associated with central Mexico. So, if you're an archaeologist, this city seems to be an old historical gold mine. And old historical gold mines often come with warnings. For one thing, it's keep out, the ceiling might fall on you. Besides, even though scientists are excited about this discovery, if the king can really walk between realms, he's probably annoyed by all this. So what happens now that the king's eternal rest has been disturbed? Well, by opening and stepping into the tomb of King Chak, archaeologists basically stepped into a sealed sacred place. Maya tombs weren't just holes in the ground with a fancy coffin. They were sealed like cosmic vaults, locked up with stone, soil, and sometimes elaborate closing rituals. The goal was to mark the end of their use and protect what was inside. Archaeology at Karakol and other Maya cities shows this in action: thick ceiling layers, termination offerings, and carefully placed debris, all saying, "This place is done, keep out." Today's archaeologists still treat them that way, working under Belizean laws and cultural protocols, making sure they explore with respect for what these spaces meant to the people who built them. However, it's eerie to think about mythology and whether King Chak is going to haunt the archaeologists. I guess we'll see. They shouldn't be afraid because he's old and has no teeth. Maybe he will annoy them with rain. He's named after a rain deity, after all, and we still don't know about his true power level. The Mayans were a fascinating civilization, and their structures are still among the most mysterious ones you can find. Despite being isolated from the known world, they also built pyramids without cranes, mapped stars without telescopes, and knew how to bury a king. Karakol is full of secrets. A hidden tomb under another tomb, a toothless king with a scary-looking mask and a deity's name. Almost unbelievable. And amazingly, there is still stuff being found. So maybe it's not too late for me after all. But first, let's see the aftermath of this curse, huh?